Eagles versus Packers. I have a nice 6-man for you guys, as well as a 4-man for those of you who want to take it a little bit safer. But first, let's recap last night's picks. So this first one here, full correlation stack, ended up not going in the right direction, but it was actually closer than it looks right here. This touchdown prop here for Lamar Jackson could have actually hit if that connected with Zay Flowers here, which would have also cashed this prop here. Would have went 3-1, potentially an OT where Travis Kelce maybe could have got those yards. Realistically not. So overall, this slip did not go according to the game script. And as for the slip I gave out in the video 2 nights ago, we did cash on the 2 tennis props as I showed in last night's video. But the Mahomes and Kelce stack did hit, but technically in the wrong direction here. We went for the over with the pass attempts and the receiving targets. Unfortunately, they both went under despite the value we got on Kelce. He was pretty much a ghost along with Mark Andrews last night. And the fact that the Chiefs were up the majority of the game is going to take away those pass attempts from Mahomes. That being said, let's get onto the board. I'm going to be building a full game stack between the NFL game tonight, as well as a format that's also going to include some NFL, some soccer, and some MLB. So let's start it off with the 6-man. So the 6-man slip we're going to build is going to be quite similar to the one I did in last night's video. We have a very similar game state to what we had in the game last night. -2 spread towards the Eagles, so this should be a tight game. An even higher total than the game last night, so it should be very back and forth, which means we're expecting touchdowns this game. And to be specific, we're expecting at least 3 for each of these teams, right? If the Eagles are getting 3 touchdowns, we expect the Packers to bounce back with 3 touchdowns too. So we're going to go over to this rush plus receiving touchdowns prop on the combo one. The best one right here is going to be the Devonta Smith and Jaden Reed one. We're going with the over here, and we can go over to the OddsJuice dashboard and check the value on this. I've done all the math in the back end, and we're spitting out a -119 fair odds, or a 54.34% chance that this combo prop goes over. Now we're basing this on the probability that Jaden Reed is going to get a touchdown, as well as the probability that Devonta Smith is going to get a touchdown, and we're combining these two together to get that higher win percentage. And like I explained in last night's video, there's probably an even higher than a 54% chance that these guys cash together, because touchdowns are going to be correlated. If Green Bay is getting a touchdown, we're expecting Philly to bounce back, so we're going for Smith on that over touchdown, assuming that Reed was not the one who got the touchdown for the Packers. And the beauty of this combo is Smith is basically the second most likely to get a receiving touchdown, right behind AJ Brown on the Eagles. And Jaden Reed is probably tied with most likeliness to get a touchdown other than Watson. So if these teams do end up getting 3 touchdowns each, it's very likely that one of these guys are going to cash. Now I'm also going to throw in this combo prop right here. We got AJ Brown and Wicks on the over half a rush plus receiving touchdown. This is going to make a lot of sense when I throw in the third prop, but just for now, like I said, AJ Brown is the most likely person to get a receiving touchdown on the Eagles. Wicks is of course not very likely to get a touchdown in comparison to the other guys on the Packers, but for both of these to cash, you could see a scenario where Jaden Reed is getting a touchdown, AJ Brown is bouncing back with that receiving touchdown, and you cashing both of these. But even better is when you combine this with the passing touchdowns prop. Jalen Hurts on the over 1.5 demon prop. I normally advise against demons, but guys, this is so correlated with these two props right here. And you're going to see at the end, we get a very nice boost from throwing in Jalen Hurts. And it's not that unlikely for Jalen Hurts to get over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I checked the odds across multiple sportsbooks, about +105 or +110, which basically means about a 45% chance that he goes over this passing touchdowns prop. Combine that with the fact that we have 2 touchdown props that have both of his main targets, well, then you have some very nice correlation here. If Jalen Hurts is getting 2 passing touchdowns, it's very likely that either Brown or Smith is going to be on the other side of the touchdown, and maybe it ends up being both of them. So he gets 2 touchdowns, 1 to Brown, 1 to Smith, and that's excluding the fact that Jaden Reed and Wicks could also get a touchdown to cash either of these props. So absolutely beautiful correlation there. Next, we're going to go over to the fantasy score prop, and we're going to take Jordan Love on his over 17.5. Now, this prop is good for a multitude of reasons. The first one is that it is a back and forth game. Lots of passing yards are expected. We're also expecting a lot of touchdowns, especially with the game script that we already have when we combine these 3 guys together. Now, for a QB to get fantasy score, the best way is to get passing touchdowns. Jordan Love is very likely to get at least 2 passing touchdowns. You know that because he's a goblin prop at 1.5 passing touchdowns. I could technically throw this in, but it's going to greatly reduce our payout. So I'd rather go for the fantasy score that's going to give us a full nice 28x payout, as I'll show you at the end. So for the fantasy scoring, specifically for QBs, you're basically getting 1 point per 25 yards you throw. As we know, Jordan Love is projected about 256 yards. So let's say he does get 250 yards on the lower end, which would realistically be way more if this game script were to pan out, because he would have to throw a lot to catch up with the touchdowns that Jalen Hurts is getting. That would net him 10 fantasy score right away. And as I said, his passing touchdowns is also likely. So let's say he does get 2 passing touchdowns. Well, that's going to net him another 4 for each of those passing touchdowns. That sends him to 18. Now that's nice and all, we're at 18 already, but you have to consider that he's probably going to throw an interception. He is more likely to than not. He's at minus 140 to throw an interception, or less likely he could also fumble the ball. But let's say he does get a -1 from either the interception or a fumbles loss. So now we'd be back at 17 fantasy score. To get the rest of the fantasy score, since we're only at 17, we'd go with the rushing yards. He's probably going to get around 6 to 8 rushing yards, giving him another 0.6 to 0.8, which would put him at 17.6 to 17.8. Still above that 17.5 fantasy score. And remember, we undervalued his passing yards. We said he's only going to get 250. If he even gets 260 or even 275, which is very realistic in a game script like this, where Jalen Hurts is getting 2 passing touchdowns, well then that's a very nice cash on Jordan Love fantasy score. Now on top of that, for all this to work, we need at least 2 passing touchdowns for Jordan Love. Well then that's absolutely perfect because we have Wicks and Jaden Reed in these receiving touchdowns props. If he does end up throwing 2 touchdowns, it's very likely that Jaden Reed or Wicks is going to be on the other side of at least one of those touchdowns. So you can see how this is all coming together. You're looking for a shootout game. You're looking for passing touchdowns. Even if the passing touchdowns for one specific team is not going to the targets that we need, like Wicks and Jaden Reed, maybe Jalen Hurts is the one actually throwing to Brown and Smith. So these combo props are very OP, especially when you're combining them up with the passing touchdowns for each of the QBs. Now we're not done just yet. We're going to throw in 2 more props that are going to make sense with this game script, and that next one is going to be Josh Jacobs on his under 16.5 rush attempts. Now I already like this prop on his own. He's set at 16 on underdog. He's also minus 130 juice on various sports books, so the under is already lean, but the under is even more of the lean when you add it to this game script here. If we're expecting a lot of passing and passing touchdowns, well, that means we're probably going to have less rush attempts, especially if Green Bay is the one playing from behind. They're going to have to match those passing touchdowns. Less rush attempts for Josh Jacobs. Pretty simple to understand the correlation between these 4 players with Josh Jacobs under rush attempts. And to finalize it, if we're expecting a lot of touchdowns, what are we not expecting? Field goals. We're going to go over to Jake Elliott to grab his under 1.5 field goals made. For Jalen Hurts to cash his over 1.5 passing touchdowns, there's probably going to be at least 3 touchdowns within the game. Because you also have to consider that Jalen Hurts could probably get a touchdown himself, as well as Saquon Barkley, 2 players who are pretty likely to get rushing touchdowns. So if he's actually getting the 1.5 passing touchdowns, it's very unlikely that they're going to be kicking field goals here. So we're going to tie this all up with the under 1.5 field goals made. And I like Jake Elliott too because the under is juiced. It's about minus 125 on various sports books. And this is going to pay a nice 27x if you get 6 out of 6, and a 3x if you get 5 out of 6. And normally the payouts are 25x and 2x, so we do get that boost from this demon prop, as well as all the beautiful correlation, which is not being reduced here. This is what I like to call a nice offense script in this Green Bay versus Philly game. Now that slip's a bit crazy. If you want something a little bit more tame, a nice little 10x, we're only going to need to hit 4 props. We're going to go over to the pass attempts prop, and we're going to have Jalen Hurts on his over 32.5 pass attempts, and we're going to be correlating this with his main target. That's going to be AJ Brown on the over 8.5. Saw what I did with Kelsey and Mahomes. Pretty similar concept. Hopefully this time they both go over together. Now this stack, I'm not exaggerating, is probably the best one in the NFL. And what I mean by that is when Jalen Hurts is going over his pass attempts, AJ Brown is also going to be going over his pass attempts, and vice versa. And that will happen very, very often. I don't have the exact stat on me, but I'm pretty sure when I was stacking these guys last season, it was something like 12 out of 13 games they went within the same direction, which effectively means if you were combining these guys in slips all last season, you're basically hitting 2 props for the price of 1, assuming you got the direction right. But the reason I like the over tonight is Jalen Hurts does have juice towards the over on multiple sports books. I see DraftKings at minus 125, I see Caesars at minus 120, and the rest are kind of flat, but there's a slight overlean towards Jalen Hurts. But the real overlean is on AJ Brown at 8.5 targets. We could compare this line over to underdog, and you'll notice that he is at 9 targets here. So we're getting half a target of value, which is absolutely massive. And his 5.5 receptions is actually juiced towards the over, about like minus 130, depending on what sportsbook you're seeing. So we're expecting AJ Brown to get at least 6 receptions tonight, and he catches about 67% of his targets, meaning if he is getting 9 targets, he is expected to get 6 receptions. So it's right in line with a receptions prop. But the reason I'm not going with receptions is because pass attempts is more correlated with targets, of course, than it is with receptions. Hurts doesn't even have to complete these passes for AJ Brown to go over those targets. And you'll also notice if AJ Brown is getting 9 targets, that is clearing almost 30% of Jalen Hurts' pass attempts line alone. That's excluding all the other passes he's going to be giving out to Devonta Smith, Dallas, and all the other players on the team. So beautiful stack there. I absolutely love it. But now we're going to go over to soccer, so we get a perfect 10x on the slip. And we're grabbing Alisson Becker on the under half a goal allowed. It's Brazil versus Ecuador. And this is just a straight juice play. So if we go over to Pinnacle in this Brazil versus Ecuador game, you see that their over half a goal is plus 112. Their under half a goal is minus 131. Obviously, if they're going under half a goal, well, then Alisson is not conceding a goal, so he is staying under. So the juice is towards the under here. Minus 131, 112 essentially converts to a 54.6% chance that Alisson stays under that half a goal allowed tonight. And lastly, we're going to go over to the MLB and end it off with everyone's favorite player. We're going to Shohei Ohtani on the over 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. Now, I know people love jamming Ohtani overs every chance they could get. Tonight, it's actually pretty good value. He did not hit last game versus the Angels, but I looked at some odds, and DraftKings has him at minus 140. Caesars has him at minus 135. We also have him at minus 140 on Bovada. So that's another nice prop that's probably hitting at about a 54% chance. And then you have these two guys, basically a 2-for-1 special here. In reality, we're looking for 3 props to hit if you really want to think about it that way, and you're getting that perfect 10x payout. That is going to be the 2 subs for tonight, guys. Good luck.